Man, we absolutely love these guys, and Scott was the one who normally interviews, so just bear with me because this is a new thing for me. But man, we're really excited, and I know Sunday we heard so much of your story. But before we kind of jump into everything, can you guys give us a little bit of background of sort of where you're from, whether you grew up in the church or not? Can you kind of share? And just so you know, it might get a little emotional. This guy is a teddy bear. It's a beautiful thing, and it's a bad combination when you have Pastor Scott up here with somebody else. But we're so excited. So Pat, can you kind of give us a little bit of a background of where you're coming from?
Sure. You want to go first, son?
First, is that all right, Pastor? Yeah. Okay. God bless you, saints here in Patchogue. I'm so happy to be here. So my name is Amanda, and I grew up knowing Jesus. My parents took us to church. I loved watching. I used to listen to the tambourines and the people praising God, and I knew that it was right and it was beautiful. I loved Sunday school. I would sit there and drink it in. And so I was raised in it. But then we moved from Brooklyn to North Babylon, and in that time, probably about 13 or 14, my parents were kind of looking for that church in the area and really didn't find one right away. And so there was a period of time of kind of, I call it like a little bit of the desert. And when we weren't in fellowship like that. And so my high school years and my college years I didn't live a life that reflected a follower of Christ. I didn't know how to follow him, but I did always love him. But that was going to usher in some big storms that were coming, and God was on the other side of that, and you're going to hear all about it. But so I did know the Lord. I grew up in a house like that, but it was a desert there. Yeah.
That's awesome, Pat.
Okay. I grew up in a family of 7 in Lindenhurst. The youngest of 7, 5 boys, 2 girls. As you can tell already, my wife's a much better speaker than me,
No.
so just bear with me.
No.
Nice household. I mean, my parents were married. They had a great relationship. Money was tight. I was in Catholic church. I went to Catholic school for a little bit. Going to church every Sunday, but like as a young man, I was just like not really getting anything out of it. You know, I'd just be showing up and just really no connection going on there, just looking to get out of there, you know. So that was pretty much how I grew up.
Yeah, and that's awesome. It's like sort of two sides of the story over here. So can you guys kind of share with us how it was that you guys met and kind of came together?
Sure. Do you want me to go? I'll go. Then, all right. So my older sister Mary and his older brother Jake, one of twins in his family, they married and met. And so we kind of met like that, the 2 younger brothers and sisters. And we say all the time, when we met, it was sparks flying immediately, and it wasn't like us to be. It just was like God was there, and I didn't even know I didn't give him the glory that he deserved. Forgive me, Papa, but at that time, I didn't. But we immediately knew, it was an immediate love connection there. It wasn't like we started off and it was, we weren't sure. We were very sure. And so we met kind of like in a family way. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Awesome. So you guys met through siblings, and
right?
Then started dating, and then got married. Can you guys kind of share with us, because I know also we have a lot of like really newly married people in this place, and you sort of go through that honeymoon phase. By the way, I have no idea. I'm just taking everyone's word for it. So, but can you kind of share with us what it was like to be newly married, especially you sort of have a background in God, and Pat coming from a totally different perspective. How was it in the beginning? For you guys?
Well, you know what? I should have probably also mentioned that again in how we first met. We were married. We were engaged by about 2 years. Dated for 2, engaged for 2, and we had our oldest daughter Ava, who's going to be 21 on the 7th, and my daughter Summer, who is 18. So we had the two girls, and in the beginning, again, what we started off wonderful, but then the stresses and the finances. We had a home in West Islip, it's old colonial, and it needed a lot of work. And just like all of us that we know, adding children in the mix, we started feeling that heaviness. And the fact of the matter is, and again, as we share our story, we didn't have Christ as a center of our marriage or our dating relationship. We didn't. So it was just a matter of time, like all of us, when he's not that rock. And so, really good people, of course, the stresses of life became pretty intense. If you want to speak to that.
Yeah, so in the beginning, that's like, you're killing it.
No.
You don't even have to talk. Seriously. You're just the eye candy
I'm such a
here
talker, it's
tonight,
bad.
Pat.
No.
So the beginning, though, I know that it did get stressful. Was it stressful right away? Was it something that sort of like right out of the gate? Was it the tension, or how was it sort of in the beginning of the process?
Okay, so we had two girls, nice house, needed a bunch of work. Like my wife said, I started to feel the stress of being a dad, and not having tons of money coming in. My dad died of he got sick fast and died fast, and he was too young. It was like I don't know, just a couple of years after we got married.
Mm-hmm.
And so anxiety started kicking in for me, which I never had before. I always knew there was something missing in my life, but I just couldn't put my thumb on it, So, again, I lost my father. Marriage, I thought before we got married, I know a lot of kids do today, a lot of younger couples do today. They think when they get married that everything's going to get fixed. We're going to get married. I know we got some issues, but once we get into the house, we'll be good. But everything magnified with the stresses of kids, money, and then just life was getting rough for me. And then I got into a restaurant with my family I for 5 years, and then that was good for a little bit, and then that started to fail, the restaurant, and I became impossible. I went to the marriage thinking that the marriage is going to fix me, and kind of like a fairy tale that everything was going to be fine, and things just, I guess it just magnified everything. And what else from there, love?
Well, I guess that was to the point where it was so bad, and then you decided to. I know you have questions for us, but I mean, and that we, and that it came to the point where he, in fact, decided to leave.
Right. So how was it for you, Amanda, on the other side, where it started so good, and like you said, sort of this expectation that marriage is this fairy tale, and just when this was happening with Pat, before he decided to leave, what was it like on the other side when it started to sort of disconnect?
Right. Well, I always describe it as just complete, and we probably all, or most of us, that despair or that sadness that is just so deep that really it can only be the Lord that can pull you out of that darkness. So, I mean, it was so unbelievably sad. I'm looking at my daughters right now. At that point, I was living with my parents in the house that I grew up as a teenager. I hadn't finished my college degree, so again, I was waitressing, not really in the field that I wanted to be in. So it was absolutely dark, but I knew God was already in working, and he was wooing me and reminding me of who I was, that little girl that knew his name and he knew my name, and I had let him go. And I always describe it as forgetting my first love. And so I guess I'll talk about the lowest point being in my parents' room, my room, and I had my girls set up. I just wanted to lie down. Again, when you're that sad, if you can relate, your body just really, you just become tired. And I remember it was a beautiful, beautiful sunny day that always strikes me because, we're summer people, beach people. Nothing would keep me from being out on a beautiful day. But I put my girls down in the bed with me. I said, let's lay down with Mama for a little bit. I'm just so tired. And I remember lying on my stomach and putting my cheek on the pillow and just tears coming down. And I said, I know, Jesus, that you're real, and I need you. And my prayer at that point, over and over, wasn't a long one that you hear. It doesn't have to be long. It was help, and it was me. And it was over, and it was over again. And I just kept saying, help me, help me, help me, help me. And like a little girl, and I say it too, I bet you, I don't even know if somebody came in the room and would have heard those words, but it was like my spirit bearing witness with his, and I just needed you. Help me. So I was lying there, and I say it all the time. I didn't see anything. I'm not signs and what. Listen, the presence of the Lord, I felt a peace that his mercy and his faithfulness, when you're at that point of total surrender, when nothing else matters but him, and you remember who you were, and he came in like a flood, and I just felt different. And when somebody that hasn't experienced that, or what it means to be saved, it's kind of hard to explain, but it was a peace like a fire. Boom. I'm not saying it was a long process. I'm not saying it's overnight. God is his timing is his timing. His ways are not my ways. But I wouldn't change one thing, and it was bad. I mean, we don't even have enough time to talk. I mean, really, it was as bad gets.
Yeah, we were.
You gotta. I keep talking. You gotta tell me what to say. I told you.
We were.
Scott knows.
We were separated for 2 years, and we were both. I know I was working hard on the divorce, trying to get divorced. For whatever reason, I don't know. And then your lawyer was really pushing you to get divorced, and so we. I just remember at the time, if you want. I would go. Yeah, there's so much to say in this half hour. So I would go to visit my wife when she had my 2 daughters at the time, and after you want to talk about Laura for a second?
Oh yeah.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
I should have thought of that before.
Actually, before we jump into that real quick, Pat, can you, because you kind of touched on it really briefly, but I know that while Amanda was sort of going through all this and coming back to God, you didn't have that experience. And so I know you talked really briefly sort of about like going after these business ventures, trying to find your identity and things like this, and really dealing with anxiety in a gigantic way, which is such a huge issue for so many people. Can you kind of share where that brought you to? Because I know we were talking about the highlights and the big moments, but sort of how you got to the point where you then approached Amanda. Where were you at?
Yeah, well, I wanted you to talk about how you. I'm definitely going to talk about it.
Listen, I'm going to just sit down.
No,
here.
where you going?
But how you. I saw you had all this joy.
Well, right. So I guess that in leading to that point where I completely surrendered to the Lord, or resurrendered, or as a mature woman, definitely wanted him to be king over my life. So I was just seeking him and his word, and I couldn't get enough of it. And I remember going to, and she's here today, it's so beautiful, Laura, my next door neighbor, who I remember watching her through the years, having Bible studies and all those things. And I'd drive by and I'd watch, but I never went in, and and you know what? But that day I did. I remember knocking on her door, and I remember saying, Laura, what church do you go to? I just, I know I've been, and a big, humongous smile on her face. And so that started me. It was in Lindenhurst at the time. I was in North Babylon, and me just diving in to the Word and to Jesus and no one else. Everything else just faded. I really, it's the kind of thing, it's supernatural. It's only that God can do it, because in my own flesh, I'd be still floundering. But I just was thirsty for His Word, and that peace, that moment He just kept wooing me and maturing to this day, where I had joy and peace that is not possible in myself. I say that all the time, like, even if you knew my personality, to have a husband that wasn't there and to be angry about the daughters, I had peace that it was like I couldn't. If somebody, and then people would often want to talk about my situation, I would say, I'm a lot of things. It's all right. We don't have to talk about that. God's good. Don't worry about it. We could talk about other things, that my broken marriage and what looks really messed up to everybody else. But I had peace and joy that. So it was, you just couldn't. It was just, you couldn't. It was hard to understand, and it was hard for him to understand. I think that's what you want to get into. So he is not at this point.
No.
Knowing the Lord. And so I think I was a source of.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
So I would go to my wife's apartment, and
I moved into a little apartment.
I'd go there, and I'd be super aggravated for whatever reason, because I was always aggravated. And I'd go pick up my daughters, and I'm looking for an argument, because we're getting divorced, and that's what you do. You argue, So I'd go there, and I try to rock her. I try to, start an argument with her, and she'd be like, well, when you drop the girls off on Friday, if you want, you can have dinner with us. And I'd be like, dinner? Like, my wife had this joy about her that I kept seeing for 2 years. We were separated and working on the divorce, and I was just like, what's going on? Why I couldn't understand the peace that she had, So and I was very much in turmoil. My life was not good. So I had my own apartment out east, and what I would do is I would pick my daughters up, and this one time that stands out to me is I took my girls out. I probably took them to McDonald's, and I took them, set them up on the couch in my apartment, and I put the TV on for the girls, and my life at this point it wasn't even day to day. It was moment to moment, and I shut the door, left it a little open. I didn't want my girls. I couldn't totally shut the door, but I went in the room and I asked God. I said, and who I knew a little bit that there was a God from when I was a kid, that in church, but I never had a personal relationship with Him. But I went in and I said, God, not for me, but for my daughters. You gotta do something for me, because I can't live like this. I can't live like this, God. I'm good, Lord. And it wasn't that moment, but someone had given me a couple weeks before a book. It was Max Lucado. The name of the book is Traveling Light, and there was a chapter in there. It was Psalms 23, and it's talked about shepherding, about how the Lord is our shepherd, and that just hit me in my darkest point of my life. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, I was going through this life on my own, trying to fix as a man, trying to fix everything in my life on my own, do everything on my own, and failing at it in my younger 30s. And it just hit me. God, Lord, you're with me. You're my shepherd. I can't believe it that I could have. And I just kept reading. I just kept reading Psalm 23. I went through the book, and it started to soften my heart a little bit. It started to open my eyes up, and the more I read, the more the anxiety went away. I mean, my anxiety was like, and I'm sure some people could relate. It was physical. It was like in my chest. I could feel like my heart beating out of my chest, but I wouldn't let people know. I mean, maybe my brother knew and my mom knew, but I couldn't let society know that I was just in so much pain. So that was a beginning of, praise God, that was just a start for me. And I remember, like my wife said, it was like I didn't have any fancy prayer or anything like that. It was just like God, help me. You got to help me. And
He does.
what it was is I just started. I opened the door. I opened the door to let him into my life, to let him start to soften my heart. So that was a beginning. What else, love?
That's so awesome. You know what I love about what you both just shared is the moment that God started to change something. It wasn't like you recited a whole chapter of the Bible, but both different backgrounds, both just saying, I need you to help me. And I think that's like the most spiritual, like you were just saying, opening the door. That's like the most spiritual thing you can do. And I know that in a service like this, you can hear that, and people hear the moment where you really cry out to God. But I know that it was a process from that point on. So. It didn't just, the light didn't just come on, things didn't just change. So Amanda, can you kind of share, or Pat, I mean, you're ready to go.
No, I just want to say it still is a process.
Yeah.
If I start thinking I can do things on my own and not giving everything to him, and
so
as a man, I still think I can do things on my own. I still think I can fix mortgages and everything in business, and it's just without him I can't.
Yeah.
And the second I try to do it on my own is the second I fail.
Yeah. Man, Pat, you're preaching tonight.
I know.
Get the organ up here.
Oh,
Awesome.
No,
Awesome. So, Amanda, can you kind of share sort of, because you didn't know that was going on with Pat from where you were.
Right.
So the process from that point of just crying out to God, like sort of what started to unfold for you.
Right. So and that's the thing, when you trust the Lord, I wasn't saying, my prayer wasn't like, oh, Lord, please fix my marriage. It was not even that. It was God had me in such a place, like such a beautiful, beautiful place through unbelievable trial and tribulation, that I just wanted his will. So I had love and forgiveness that comes when you want to look like Jesus, you want to be like Jesus, and it's going to come with that. And he's going to do it through his strength, not mine. So I wasn't, I'd feel bad for, like, I'd look at him and my heart would break. And I would, but not like a wife breaky. It was like, as my brother in Christ, like anybody that you don't know him, like if you knew him, if you just, and I always say, it's one of my favorite scriptures. It's like, that's not mine, but it's mine. Like when you just touch the hem of his garment, he's going to do the rest. He's going to do the rest. Just touch that hem. It's his good pleasure to do it. So I wasn't so overly concerned about Pat, knowing that my Abba Father had a perfect plan for me. So it was just like seeking him, just his word, and then right. And then that's what I was saying. Just like, again, my prayer wasn't for my marriage; it was for his will. And with that, during out this time, we have a divorce lawyer and these things and every step, moment to moment, like, Papa, am I saying yes to this? Do you want me? Because I know you don't love divorce. I know your word says that you're not for divorce necessarily. But on the face of it, no to that. So do you want me to? And he would just continue to give me guidance when that word was open, my heart was open. He will tell you what to do to the most minute detail. The most minute. And you know what he would again, the Lord would call Mrs. Davidson, we're one signature away. And your heart races for a second, and then he would remind me, and he did this many times, I love Pat too. And I would hear that, I love Pat too. And that would be it. I'm like, oh, wow, you do? But I don't know. It's still and I'm bigger than any judge. I'm bigger than any signature. I am bigger than that. And I trusted him, and praise God. Yeah.
So awesome. That's incredible.
So we were doing our own, again.
Yeah.
He was in such turmoil and I was getting closer, but God was right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pat, can you kind of share with us the other side of that? From the moment you kind of cried out to God,
Yeah.
like I know it was a process and a different process for you as well. What was that like for you?
We're putting so many years into
Yeah.
such a small frame here. It's hard, and I just love when my wife says that. And I'm sure a lot of people have different situations, and it's like they pray how you want to pray, but some people are going to say, Lord, if I can just get that house, or if I can just get that marriage fixed. But sometimes it's not about you getting the house or getting that car. And if you don't, you just have to realize that it's God's will. It's his will, and it's his time. His time is not always our time. People are into bad relationships. They're in addiction for so long, and I hear people say to me, and I think it myself too, how long is this going to go on? How long is this? I don't know. I don't have the answer, but the Lord does, and I do know that if you just stay and you continue to press in, and it's on his time, he is there with you.
Amen.
He is with you.
No doubt.
He is with you. To do it on your own, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. And I did that for a lot of years. I failed for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And again, it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle. Christ came into my heart 15 years ago, and I still, there's nothing's easy. Nothing's easy, So after I was with my daughters that day, and actually it was probably a bunch of weeks later, I walked in to see Mandy, and she was doing her thing and happy to be doing her thing, and I wasn't so aggravated about her doing her thing anymore, but still we were heading for the divorce. I didn't tell her that what I had experienced. My experience was between me and the Lord. I was just so grateful that I could actually function, So I went to go see my wife, and I told her the girls were running around the apartment somewhere, and again, it wasn't so much for our marriage. I said to her, I said, would you ever think about forgiving me? I said, could you possibly forgive me for how I've been acting? And we were separated for 2 years, but the madness was going on for much longer than that, So I remember that, asking her that, and I think you just smiled. I don't know. But
I knew that I knew, and again, it's the Lord thing where you abide in him, and that he whispers and he tells you to go to the left, to go to the right. And I just knew in my spirit that he was different. I didn't think that, but I looked at him, and I always say, I could picture that day, I could picture the apartment, and like his face looked different to me. His countenance looked different. I thought, knowing how big our God is and what he's already done for me, I'm like, this is it. But he just had, there was like just sharp edges off that I had never seen, ever seen. But it was like, maybe man of God walking in here. I think this is what's happening. I don't know. And that's what God was doing. Yeah.
So awesome. So can you guys kind of share with these guys, when you guys kind of got to the point where there's forgiveness and you're taking these steps, how did God restore your marriage? How did you get beyond the divorce lawyers and all that stuff, like practically, spiritually? How did that happen for you guys?
Well, I remember after I asked Mandy, I said, will you forgive me? And she really didn't say, oh, yes. And that we kind of stepped away for a while and talked and, and probably started to have dinner together for a little bit and spend time with our daughters together, which we hadn't in a long time. And that was really nice for the girls to see. But so then my wife was plugged into a church, a born-again, Bible-believing church, and she asked me to go. And I went to the church, and I remember going in there and people knowing her, people looking at me, people shaking my hand, hugging me. But meanwhile, they kind of know I'm this guy that's been doing this for a bunch of years, but still nice to me, open to me. I was like, huh. So the music goes on, and I'm looking around, and the hands go in the air, and people are.
I'm like,
I hear some people saying stuff behind me.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy on his knees over here, and there's another guy over here on one knee, and his hands are in the air, and I'm like, well, what's going on here? And then, we went, and then my wife, I says, what's going on with all the the hands and the yelling? And she's like, so I go back next week, and my wife's like, you see this woman over here? Her husband just died. God gave her joy back. Wow. So awesome. This woman over here lost a child. God gave her joy back. Come on. Divorce. This woman's divorced. She's got all the kids. God's given her joy back. She has peace. God's given her peace in all of this. So here I am. My hands are up. I'm on my knees.
Praise God. Yep.
And that's why people are just like, they're giving. And I try to tell my brothers and sisters who are still, some of them are on the fence, and I get them going to church with me, and they're still going to Catholic church. And I remember when I was going to Catholic church, I didn't have this personal relationship with Christ. I never knew that I could deal with him directly, that I could speak to him directly, in the car with me directly. I always was somewhat intimidated that, I got to speak to somebody to speak to him that's going to possibly speak to him, and I got to do all of this other. So, the gratefulness of God and his mercy, that's why you see, and it just brings me, when I see people like that, I'm just like, God, thank you for healing my brother and my sister. I don't know what they went through. I don't know what they've gone through, but man, they're so happy about it. Thank you, Father. And that just, we see it. Love, we leave church. Yep. Whenever we leave church and somebody's saved, that is just our biggest thing, man. Shout. It's just like, God, you plucked me from the darkness, from the pits, and what you, man.
Our word is grateful. So grateful. We'll say it over. I'm so grateful. To this day, this is many years ago. We talk about it because, we want to give glory to God every chance we get, but we get emotional about it because it's just that it just doesn't make sense on any logic, any human logic. And when he does that, when he seals that with fire, it makes you grateful. 20 years later, we still are. Amen.
So awesome. You want to say something else? Like,
just-
you got it. Let's
I didn't
go.
see that.
Let's go. You're on fire tonight, man. Let's go.
No, I just when I'm working with a lot of men or whoever it is out in the field, it's I tell them about what God has done for me, and they're like, you don't understand what my life is like. You don't understand what's going. No, I do. I do. There were police involved. There were families involved. This was horrible. This wasn't a light thing. So I do know. So I try to tell them, if you just open your heart, God can fix anything.
Anything.
Not that we don't have problems.
Yes.
But with Him, it's everything. It's
Yes.
everything.
So good.
Praise
So
God.
good. Hey, can we give it up for Pat and Amanda? So incredible. And as the band comes up, what I love about y'all's story and what's so cool, especially when you start pointing out like people in worship, and sometimes, and you might be here and it's your first time, and you're seeing people singing loud and clapping and raising their hands, and it's a little bit like, what the heck is going on? But I love what's so powerful about your story is God didn't come for the good people. He came for the broken. He came for the people who would say this: help me. I need help. I can't do it anymore. And the moment that you guys did that, now you can sit up here when everybody, I remember even on Sunday you guys were saying people were pressuring you both ways.
Oh,
so
yes.
you should just go forward with the divorce, but God.
Amen.
But God, because when He wants to do something, He'll do what no man can do. And so it's just incredible. I love what the devil tried to kill. God said, I see actually 20 years later they're going to be on a stage and they're going to be talking about how good Jesus is. So awesome. So hey, can I ask you guys before we close out, sort of what is your marriage like now? What has God done over all those years? And I know it's not perfect. I know there's always
Right.
issues and stuff like this. But in terms of when you put Jesus when you really put Jesus at the head and said, God, it's not about us. We want to serve you. What has that looked like in your family?
Well, we say it all the time, especially when we're speaking about what happened to us, and it seems like it was a short period of time, but know that it wasn't, and it was years, and our marriage still goes on. But if it wasn't for the fact that we know where to go to individually and together, He taught us it is Him. He is the way, and there's nothing that in His word and in prayer that He won't explain to you and guide you. And so, the trials and tribulations, we live in a fallen world. It is from moment to moment. We're always going to the Lord. But what He did, it's just, we're sealed, we're saved. He sanctifies us every day. And so it's a process, but it's a beautiful, beautiful process. And it's better than I ever even dreamt all those years ago. My God gave me 2 boys after my 2 girls, my Bo, my Quinn, that I watch, and they're little godly men, and I'm like, I'm so not worthy, God. I'm so not worthy of how merciful and how faithful you've been to Pat and I. So with that love, we seek Him in our marriage every day. And I know that sounds like seeking Him. It's hard. You get in there. You fight the good fight. You do what you got to do. You put up that armor, because you know what? There's an enemy out there that wants to take you out, that hates a great marriage. We've seen great fruit, and he hates it. But every day we're going to fight, because our God is worthy. And so that you got to die to your flesh. You got to it's going to come to get you. It's going to, ladies, it's going to. But just picture that cross. Picture what He's done for you. And you fight. You fight. You stay around godly people. You remember that God might call you to do things that don't make sense on a human level. You do it. You do it anyway. You stay focused on Him, and know that throughout this whole thing, there was something. I'm like, you want me to continue? You don't want me to call that lawyer immediately and say just to stop? No. God calls you to sometimes do, often, things that don't make sense and are often hard, but it's worth it. It's sweet. He's so sweet. I can't. Oh, it's not enough. Yeah, he's so good.
As a matter of fact, can you guys actually put that picture up? I want to show you. This is their family now, and those two little boys happened because God restored their marriage. Those two destinies, what the devil tried to kill.
Amen.
How awesome is God?
So awesome.
Come on.
Yeah.
And Pat, let me just ask you this before we close out. What advice would you give someone, because you came from a place where you didn't really even know anything about this? What advice would you give someone who's lost in life? Maybe they're here tonight and they're like, I just feel that way. I feel completely lost. What would you say to that person?
I would just tell them, just open up the Word of God and continue. It may not happen immediately. It's going to take time. Be around, like my wife said, be around godly people if you can, because I was out there with people who weren't godly, and they were fine telling me that divorce is going to be okay. You're a good man. It's not okay. It's not okay to do that to those children. You know, it's not okay. So it's God's time, and I've said it a bunch of times tonight that it's on God's time. You may not go home tonight and have this big revelation, and maybe not next month. And it's not always the marriage being fixed. It's not always you getting that house. It may be you being away and on your own for I don't know how many years. But the good news is that He's with you. Is that He's with you. And He's got plans for you. And He will give you back the days the locusts have stolen from you. You remember the bad, you'll forget the bad times. You'll be like, what? And will live such a joyous life. But just keep pressing in. Just keep pressing in. And all in time. That's all I could say. And I praise God every day. I'm so grateful for that. He saved my life. He saved my marriage. We went back down to nothing. And my children, they know God. They'll know God. I didn't. I was doing it on my own for a lot of years, and I failed. So
that's so awesome. Praise God. Let me, the very last question for either one of you guys. If someone here is in a really tough spot in a marriage and they don't really know what to do, if you could just give them one word of advice from being in that position, what would you share with these guys?
I would say, if I can, take your eyes off him or her. It's powers and principalities. It's not about him. It's not about her. And just seek Him. Pray for him or her. Definitely pray. But take your head out of the marriage part of it. Because it's all about Him. So instead of trying to fix or wonder when he's or she's going to change, it's God. Stay focused on Him. You're His daughter. He's wooing you. He'll deal with him, and vice versa. He's got him. Don't worry about it. God's got it all planned out. But again, it's taking the goggles off of what marriage should be. It's about relationships, and it's your relationship with Him. Because throughout the trial and tribulations that we went through, it was about individually. He broke us, and then our marriage was fruit from it. So again, worry about your union with Jesus Christ, definitely.